Hello, this is Hannah from Daisy Farm Crafts. This is a video tutorial for the Crochet Ruffle Rose baby blanket. This blanket was made with Bernat Softy Baby Cotton, which is a cotton acrylic blend. It's the same exact yarn as regular Bernat Softy Cotton, so you can use either one of those. And I am using a size G 4mm hook and a size H 5mm hook. The finished size of this blanket is about 25 inches by 29 inches, so it's just a little stroller size blanket, but of course you can customize it and make it bigger if you'd like. But for this size, I used about 3.5 skeins of yarn, so I needed 4. And if you'd like the written pattern that goes along with this video, you can find that on our website, daisyfarmcrafts.com, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. So to get this blanket started, I'm going to start with a smaller hook that I'm going to be using for the rest of the blanket. I'm going to start with my 4mm G hook, and I'm going to make a base chain that is an even number, but it needs to be an even number that when you divide it in half is an odd number. So for my actual baby blanket, I chained 118, which divided in half is 59. And I am just going to make a small practice swatch for right now. So I am going to chain 22, which divided in half is 11. And the reason for that is that I'm using the mesh stitch for this blanket, and which is a combination of single crochet chain 1. So basically when I chain my even number, whatever half of that is how many mesh stitches I'll have. And I need an odd number so that I can make it work when we add our cute little ruffles. All right, so I've made a base chain of 22. And for this first row, I'm just gonna work 1 row of single crochet, still using this smaller 4mm hook. So I'm just gonna insert my hook into that second chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And I'm just gonna work a single crochet into each of these chains. And I'm just starting with a base row of single crochet so that when I work my border, it kind of makes the base chain a little more sturdy so that it doesn't, pull away from my blanket, which can happen sometimes with the mesh stitch that we're going to be using. So just this first row of all single crochet. All right, so at the end of this row, I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So I have my first row of just all single crochet. And at this point, I'm going to switch to my bigger 5mm hook. And now is when we're going to start working the mesh stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook right into this first single crochet. Insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then chain 1. So just a single crochet, chain 1. Then I'm going to skip the next stitch and do single crochet, chain 1 into the next. And again, skip, single crochet, chain 1. And I'm just going to do that all the way across. All right, and hopefully when you get to the end of the row, it should work that you skip and land in the last stitch. If not, you may need to recount your base chain and make sure that you chained an even number. So work that last single crochet, chain 1, which will also count as our turning chain, and turn our work. And now we're just going to keep working the mesh stitch until we have 11 rows total, counting this first row of single crochet. So again, I'm just going to insert my hook into this first single crochet, chain 1, and then skip this chain 1 space and then work into the next single crochet. So once you kind of get this going, it gets easier to see. You can see that you're just working into these single crochets, these little V's right here, skipping over the chain 1 spaces. So I'm just doing single crochet, chain 1, all the way across. And again, we're going to work this until we have 11 rows. All right, so after we've done 11 rows of mesh stitch is when we're going to do one of these ruffle rows. So I've just worked another section of 11 rows of mesh stitch. So I just chained 1, so now I'm going to turn. And I'm going to still be working in the same spaces that we have been for the mesh stitch into these single crochets right here. But instead of working the mesh stitch, I'm going to start with a slip stitch into this first single crochet. So I'm going to just insert my hook, yarn over, and then pull right through that loop. And I'm not going to chain 1 or anything, I'm just going to do slip stitch, and then I'm going to skip that chain 1 space still, and then in the next single crochet I'm going to work 4 double crochets. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, yarn over and pull the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, 3, and 4. All right, skip the chain 1 space and then work a slip stitch into this single crochet. All right, and then again, 4 double crochets into the next single crochet. All right, so again, I'm working into the same spaces as we were working before, and I'm just alternating slip stitch and 4 double crochet. So slip stitch, skip, 4 double crochet. And we're just going to do this all the way across the row, and hopefully you should end with a slip stitch in the last stitch, which is why we needed to have an even number for the base chain that divides into an odd number, so that we could start and end the row with a slip stitch. All right, so I'm at the end of the row, and I'm just going to work my last slip stitch into that last single crochet, slip stitch, and chain 1 for my turning chain. I'm going to turn my work, and now I am going to fold these little ruffles down right kind of at the top of where where we stitched them. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to work into the same single crochets that we just worked into. So I am basically working back into row 11. If these little shell stitches are row 12, I'm working back into row 11, but from the other side. So we're going to fold these down, and I'm going to work right into the single crochet that we worked into. So I know this is a little bit tricky, but you kind of want to just look for this kind of ridge that goes along the top, and you're going to insert your hook right here, right into this first stitch, the single crochet that we just worked. And I'm going to go back to working the mesh, the mesh stitch. So single crochet, chain 1. That first stitch is the trickiest. You're just kind of inserting your hook right where we just finished working, if that makes sense. So we just worked our slip stitch into this last single crochet, and now we're just turning around this way, working right back into that same space. Just kind of inserting your hook underneath this kind of top bar right here. All right, so there's our single crochet, chain 1. And from here it gets a little bit easier because you can see where the bottom of these shell stitches and the slip stitches are. So you're going to just be looking right here where the bottom of the shell is, where we worked before. Just insert your hook right into that space, single crochet, chain 1. And then again, this is where our slip stitch is. And so we're just working to the bottom of that slip stitch, single crochet, chain 1. And then again, the bottom of the shell. Hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully kind of visually it makes more sense than I'm explaining it. But once you start working this row, it does really get more intuitive because you can just kind of see I'm working the bottom of the shell and then the bottom of the slip stitch. And so you're just working kind of on the underside of this row 11 that we already worked into, so that our little shells can fold down and make this kind of cute little ruffle row. All right, so you're just going to keep doing single crochet, chain 1 all the way across. And you're just going to keep working the mesh stitch all the way across this row. And then we'll just do the same thing, another 11 rows total of the mesh. And then you'll do another ruffle row with alternating single crochet and 4 double crochet. And that's all we're going to be doing for this whole blanket. So when you're ready to work your border, after you finish your last section of 11 rows of the mesh, you can just stop right here and chain 1 and start working down this side. And I just wanted to keep my border really simple, so I just basically repeated the same thing that we've been doing in the middle of the blanket. So I just worked 1 round of the mesh stitch around the blanket, and then did 1 round of this 4 double crochet and slip stitch to give a little ruffle border. So I just, like I said, chained 1 and started working down the side, and I'm just going to work single crochet, chain 1 into every other space, or, you know, on the end of every other row. So I'm kind of choosing to work into this space where there's this kind of longer gap right here as opposed to this little circle. So I'm just working into all of these spaces, single crochet, chain 1, and then it can get a little tricky right here to kind of see, because we kind of have like double stitches since we folded that down. But maybe just kind of look on the back side of your work and you can see that this is just one space right here. So skip over that and then just work into this space right here. Single crochet, chain 1, and we're just going to keep doing this all the way down the side. And then for my corners, I just, stopped before I got to the corner, and then I worked 3 single crochet into each of my corners. 2, 3. And then you can just keep working the mesh along this end. And for this row, this is the bottom of our blanket where we worked that first row of single crochet. And I'm actually going to insert my hook a little bit deeper down here instead of right on the edge. I'm actually going to work kind of in between the posts of this single crochet, and then I'm going to work my mesh stitch. So I have, let's see, just 1, 2, 3 in the corner, and I'm going to skip this first single crochet, and I'm going to kind of just work right in the middle of the single crochet down here and do my single crochet chain 1. And it's a little bit tedious to stick your hook down there, but it kind of keeps from your border from pulling away from the blanket. Obviously, if you don't care, you can also just, work into these spaces out here. But if you want it to be a little bit tighter, you can just insert your hook a little bit lower into between the posts of this single crochet down here. And then again, just working the mesh. So single crochet chain, skip this one, work into this stitch right here. Whoops. Get my hook in there. There we go. All right, so just keep working that mesh all the way across. And then again, 3 single crochet in this corner, and then work the mesh back up this side and across. And then when we get back to the starting corner is when we'll start doing the ruffles. All right, so back at the starting corner, I'm just gonna slip stitch into this first stitch. And I'm just gonna keep going in the same direction and start working those ruffles. So this is gonna count as my first stitch. I just worked my slip stitch. So now I'm gonna do 4 double crochet into, or I'm going to skip and then do 4 double crochet into the next stitch. And you want to try to make sure that you're working your 4 double crochets into the tops of the single crochet, which can be kind of hard to see, but it's, it's this space that's just to the right of the single crochet V right there. So you just want to make sure that you're working into that space, not the chain 1 spaces, because that'll make it pretty tricky to work all those double crochets. So if you need to, add another slip stitch or skip a slip stitch, at any point so that you're working into the single crochets, definitely do that. So there's my first slip stitch. So I'm going to do 4 double crochets. And then again, skip this stitch, slip stitch into the next stitch, skip 4 double crochet. 3 and 4. And you're just going to do this all the way around so that, it just makes another little ruffle to match these. And I didn't do anything special for the corners. I just kept this pattern going unless I was at the corner and I needed to either, add an extra slip stitch or not skip a stitch in order to make sure I'm still working in the single crochet spaces on the sides and not into the chain 1 spaces. So if you, get to the corner and you need to skip an extra or not skip an extra, you just want to make sure that you're continuing to work into the single crochet spaces on the sides and not the chain 1 spaces. And then you'll just work this all the way around and then just slip stitch into this starting stitch when you get back to here. and then you can tie off and weave in your ends and enjoy this fun baby blanket. Thanks so much for watching this video. Again, if you'd like the full written pattern, you can find that on our website, daisyfarmcrafts.com. And as always, if you make any of our patterns, please take a picture and come share with us on Instagram with hashtag daisyfarmcrafts. We'd love to see whatever you're making. Happy crocheting!